My name is Georgia Lloyd, and I'm from Winnetka, Illinois, near Chicago. And my first introduction to Marietta Johnson was through my mother's interest in progressive education. I think my mother may well have known John Dewey because he had a period of teaching at the University of Chicago. Somehow my mother learned of Marietta Johnson's work, and she took me to a summer workshop led by Mrs. Johnson in Greenwich, Connecticut in 1925. And there I met one of my classmates to be Hal Rieger, that you will also hear from on another tape. And that was a very interesting workshop. I imagine it was 6 weeks. And then the next time I encountered the organic school right here in Fairhope was when my mother brought me and some of the rest of her family to a winter workshop in 1926. It was 6 weeks long and very rewarding, but it interfered with my learning algebra in the class back in Winnetka. And after that, I was gone from the country for 2 years and came back here to the organic school in my sophomore year in high school. And I went back to my New Trier High School in Winnetka, but I didn't take to it very well. So I came back to the organic school to graduate with the class of 1931. And I appreciated Marietta Johnson very much and the school because it was a down-to-earth school and lively, and it was a sort of natural environment, a warm environment. And Marietta Johnson was a lively person and dedicated, and she was very clear in enunciating her principles, which seemed very sound to me. And when I say the school was a natural environment, we had gardenia bushes blooming on the campus, and when it rained the way it rains in Fairhope, nobody went to school with their shoes on. It was not possible. And one of the interesting things about the school was the workshops, the ceramics and the wooden shop. And in the workshop, the history professor made a boat. And on this boat, the graduating class of 21 took a 3-day trip as far as Biloxi, Mississippi, and there in Biloxi we did a folk dance demonstration. And in fact, one of the demonstrators fell in the water on the way to the home where the demonstration was being shown, and we had to iron her dress dry, I believe, so we could put on the performance. So that there were all sorts of amusing wrinkles and lively moments in the school. Can you have an intermission? Is that possible? I can't think of anything more right now. Well, I stayed in the school home, which was a boarding school of both boys and girls. And in those days, we had a time we had to be in, which was 10 p.m., which may seem very early to people in 1992, but that's what it was. And the school home, we had more boys and girls, at least in our age, and I think there was one other girl that sat at a table with 6 or 8 boys, and we learned something about being sure that they would pass the food and things like that, just little interesting items. And did you have a question? Dot?
Yes, I'd like you to tell us too, Georgia, about your, I don't think you've actually said what year you graduated and why you're here now, how much later, and how we've all gotten together, those of us that are local, and then Harold come, of course, from
Well,
California.
that's true, but I think I did mention that I graduated in the class of 31, and I came back to Fairhope because of a reunion of classmates. And I hadn't been to Fairhope for 4 years, but especially because Hal Rieger was coming from California. Although the timing wasn't the best, that I chose that time to come back because I didn't want to miss him and the rest of the reunion. So we were 7, and out of a class of 21, which I think is a very good percentage. And of course, quite a few of our class has gone on living in Fairhope, which is a very nice community. It's beautiful, and it's got intellectual people, and it has activities, and it's certainly much better, a much more interesting community to me than anything I've seen in Florida.
You spoke about the activity, Georgia, and the crafts and the folk dancing and all. What about the academics? You mentioned that when you were here before and it interfered with your learning of algebra. But did you find a lot of difficulty after you graduated here and you went into college? Did you feel you had not been sufficiently prepared in your academics at Organic?
Well, I felt a little bit missing in math because I got scared, I believe, and so that in college some of the algebra I took seemed difficult, but I really did learn all I needed to. But the thing about progressive education is that it does require very excellent teachers for the children to be motivated and be self-reliant and do the work themselves. They don't just take things in, they generate interest and motivation from within themselves. And it's not every teacher that can encourage that and take the students from where they are and broaden them.
Did you feel that in the philosophy, were you conscious of going through school, that there was emphasis on that self-motivation, self-discipline? Were you conscious of it?
Well, I certainly was very conscious of Marietta Johnson's saying that education is growth. And of course the term organic also meant growth. And I think she made it clear that you go on learning, because one of her typical remarks was that you have to be prepared for whatever the situation is to meet the situation. And that's where you show your training and what you've learned about life and getting along with other people.
Today at lunch, and all of us telling of what we have done with our lives, which to me was just a wonderful thing that we did at lunch. And as I said, asking to be the last one to speak, and as I said that I admired so what your work had been in your life, and would you tell a little about of that in the tape?
Well, yes, I think I couldn't help myself. I was born as a world citizen because my mother tried to stop World War I. In 1915, she went on a boat that had been chartered by Henry Ford to take delegates to Europe to a conference of neutrals whose purpose was